Hello and welcome to Coaster Junkies. I am your host, Danny Terry, and I am joined by my co-host, Matthew Forney. And today we're going to talk about our favorite theme park experiences, and later we'll discuss what some parks worldwide have in store for visitors in 2021. And Matthew Forney, who's going to be my co-host for the podcast. Matt, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Good. Yeah, it's definitely a very interesting time to be a avid theme park goer during the COVID-19 pandemic. Unfortunately, it's hindered a lot of abilities to be able to go to different parks and be able to ride the different rides. But there are some parks that are trying to do the best that they can to allow people to come to their parks. So it's nice. It's good to hear about that. So Matt and I are actually going to be doing this podcast that's going to be specifically featuring avid theme park fans and experts in the industry as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Everybody will, of course, get the chance to talk about, why they love coasters so much and why they love theme parks. And, it's really a genre, an area that, really appeals to so many people. So it's going to be a great topic to talk about. And should definitely be a lot of fun. So with Matt, just kind of talk about like what are a little bit of your background and also about like what kind of got you into loving roller coasters.
So I started out really young. I thought it was really an interesting area. I don't remember necessarily what drew me to it, but I remember when I was 5 or 6 years old, I was at a local video store and they had these series called Here Comes a Fire Truck, Here Comes, the police cars, and here comes the, construction trucks and everything. And it's a quick 20, 30-minute video about the specific type of vehicle or topic that the video's on, and they had one called "Here Comes a Roller Coaster," and it was featured at Six Flags Magic Mountain out in Valencia, California, which is their flagship park. And so that kind of got the ball rolling. And then when I was at Hershey Park when I was 6 or 7, I had just ridden their mine train, which is not very big, not very fast, but a good junior entry family coaster for like the young ones to get acclimated to roller coasters and the idea of what these machines can do. So we were in line for their Canyon River Rapids, which is a ride that you sit 8 to a inner tube and you go around and you get soaked. And it was, according to my parents, it was hotter than heck outside. It was like 95 degrees, and I didn't want to go on it because I at the time didn't like the idea of getting my shoes soaking wet and everything. And so I convinced my dad to take me on the Wildcat at Hershey Park. And if you guys have been to Hershey, Wildcat is not a smooth ride, very rough, and it terrified me for a couple of years. So, long story short, went to Busch Gardens like a year or two later, and I chickened out on Loch Ness Monster, and I regretted it. So then, add another year. So we're like 3 years removed from this incident, and my parents take me up to Cedar Point. We go as a family. I have an older sister, and we were visiting my aunt who lives in the area. And so we went to Cedar Point and got on the corkscrew, which to was one of the first coasters. It was the first coaster to go upside down, I believe, 3 times and go over the midway. So the two corkscrews, you can, as a guest, you can walk under them. So that's pretty cool. But just that got me over my fear of going upside down. And it's been, I guess, downhill ever since, where I've traveled the country, and I've not traveled internationally as in overseas to go to parks, but that's bucket list stuff.
Yeah, I definitely can relate to just theme parks. It's just it's just that adrenaline rush, really. Like you're getting to go on a roller coaster, and that's just kind of like that feel of feeling of flying and just that feeling that you actually really don't have anywhere else. And I actually got into it back in the 90s. My family and I went to Busch Gardens Williamsburg, which is in Williamsburg, Virginia, for anyone who's not familiar with that park. And it's currently owned by SeaWorld. At the time it was owned by Anheuser-Busch, and they actually had a brewery in Williamsburg. The brewery actually still exists. It's still right next door to Busch Gardens. And at the time, my family, we were actually going my very first time to Busch Gardens. Matter of fact, my family and I were going with my uncle. My uncle was actually visiting from town. He actually came. He was a truck driver, and he lived in Texas, but he was visiting with us, and we went. And my very first roller coaster ride was the Big Bad Wolf, which is actually the T-shirt that I'm wearing today. A roller coaster that unfortunately no longer exists at Busch Gardens, but it was it always it always holds a very special place in to me. It was my very first roller coaster of all time, and it really was groundbreaking, because it was a suspended type of roller coaster, and what it was really known for was the drop. It was the last big drop. It actually went towards the water in Busch Gardens, and then it did like a sharp left turn, and then you just like you really felt that turn once you came through that drop. Now that drop actually still does exist with one of their more recent roller coasters, Verbolten, which actually took they they completely dismantled Big Bad Wolf, and Verbolten essentially took the place of Big Bad Wolf, and essentially runs along the uh, same route that Big Bad Wolf did, and still has that same last big drop. But it doesn't you don't feel it quite as much as you did as you did on Big Bad Wolf, because like the type of style of roller coaster they have now is really more of like the standard where the roller coaster is on where the coaster car itself is on top of the track. So that's a lot of roller coasters over that style, but so you don't quite feel that turn as much as you did on Big Bad Wolf. But just went from there, and just then of course I went from there, and riding Loch Ness Monster was actually still to this day sets a record. I mean, there's actually Matt, isn't it like one of the very few interlocking roller coasters still left in the world? Like where the loops actually still
I believe
interlock,
it's
or it
the
might be
only
the
one
only one.
left.
Yeah. So it's still a record breaker right there. It's the only interlocking loop roller coaster that in existence in the world. So I hope they don't take it down, because people
Oh, no,
come to
it's
Busch Gardens to see it. So
if they take that ride down for no rhyme or reason, you can't replace it, A, because look where the land it's sitting on, it's in essentially the middle of the park, and you have
mhm,
to build around it, it's built into the land, um, and there's so much history to it, you know,
mhm.
so I that ride is they're gonna Busch Gardens will pay whatever it needs to keep that ride running for as long as possible, because that ride, I promise you, will still be standing 30, 40 years from now.
Yeah, it definitely needs to be, because it's a classic. I know sometimes it gets a little rough, because especially now me being in my early 30s, I definitely feel it, and it's gotten a little rough, but it's just a classic. It's one that I hope it stays for years to come. I mean, I know that of course they can make improvements to make it smoother. They can smooth out the track, but it's just one roller coaster that brings so many people to be able to see that. It's a record breaker that still actually exists. So, and of course, Busch Gardens, they've added quite a few roller coasters since Loch Ness. Of course, um, they've added Apollo's Chariot, which of course that actually had a lot of new headlines in the news. For those of you who've probably heard of Fabio, who actually rode on the inaugural opening of Apollo's Chariot, and it's a 190-foot drop. I think is the first drop. It's a big drop. It's not at a 90-degree angle. I think it's
No,
more of
it's
like
like 70.
yeah, 70 degree angle, but it's real close. It's still a nice big drop. But on that first drop, Fabio unfortunately came face first with a goose that was actually flying up. It got spooked. There's a little pond that's underneath the first drop, and one of the geese came up and hit Fabio right in his face, and the poor guy actually ended up being really bloody after that. But
Broke his nose.
honestly, it broke his nose, but he actually was a really good sport about it. but he didn't try to sue the park. I mean, even though he had every right to, but he didn't sue the park. He just said, "Hey, you ought to put some sort of security, like some sort of net or something to kind of prevent the geese from coming up," and they did that. They
Yeah,
added that netting, so that has actually never happened since then. So it's good. Even though his nose was broken, and of course that ended up being like headlines for years, but he was a really good sport about it. And so that actually made like national and world headlines for Busch Gardens. But since then, they've also added Alpengeist, which that's one of Matt's favorites. Actually, I think that's
it's my favorite in
that's
the
the
park.
favorite
In the
at the
park,
park. Alpengeist, and of course Verbolten. That's recently. Um, uh, More recently is Invader, which is actually a hybrid coaster.
they should have
Um,
named it Battle Clash. Battle Clash was a much better name.
Yeah, the so with Invader and several parks have actually have these hybrid type coasters where the supports are made out of steel, and then the track itself is a wooden coaster. So Invader is like that, and then of course King's Dominion in Doswell, Virginia, they added a essentially well, actually Busch Gardens coaster was like in response to King's Dominion. King's Dominion added Twisted Timbers, and there's so many different
The
parks that have
the
these
rumor
type of
the rumor for Battle or Invader was it was supposed to be an RMC, which is the company that made Twisted Timbers, and they were
Mhm.
supposed to get a ground up RMC. And I guess something fell through last minute where they didn't go with RMC, which stands for Rocky Mountain Construction, which is a new company that was based out in Idaho, and they got their start thanks to Six Flags. But that's a topic for another day.
Yeah. So there's definitely obviously a lot of parks that have the similar type of coaster, and actually coming this year at Busch Gardens Williamsburg will be Pantheon, and that will be actually a record setter right there. So but main reason why Matt and I talk a lot about Busch Gardens is like it's one of the closest parks to us. I mean, I currently live in central Virginia. Matt lives in Maryland, but it's actually one of the better parks. I'm actually smack in the middle between two parks. There's King's Dominion, which is 30 minutes north of me, is owned by Cedar Fair. And then an hour east is Busch Gardens Williamsburg. They're owned by SeaWorld Parks and Entertainment. And of course, there's another Busch Gardens down in Tampa. There's SeaWorld. They own Sesame Street Place. There's a couple of water parks that they own. I think it's like Adventure Island, Water Country USA. But honestly, my favorite sets of parks is Disney World. I mean, even though there's not quite as many uh, intense rides as say Busch Gardens or the Cedar Fair parks or even Universal Orlando, but there's just it's something special. Like they really put like a lot of effort into the theming, and I'm really more of like into theme parks than like straightforward amusement parks. But um, absolutely, I'm an avid roller coaster fan. So but that's Disney World is definitely my favorite. My favorite park at Disney World is Hollywood Studios. Originally was called MGM Studios, but once their agreement fell out with MGM, they changed it to Hollywood Studios. But of course, they've added a lot of things since then. More recently, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so that's another thing of why that park appeals to me. But I'm a filmmaker as well, so naturally, anything about the movie industry, I'm really going to love. So um, but Universal does that as well. It's all movie themed, and of course, one of the biggest things that Universal has is the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. So I really want to see that.
You haven't
Unfortunately, have
been?
not.
Oh,
Still haven't been. No.
I was there in June, not June. Sorry, I was there in March, right before the park shut down, and it was just really cool. I have a friend that lives in the area, and we decided to go. And we were there for a couple hours, and the park was busy, but we got on the new coaster, Hagrid's Motorbike Adventure. Um, which replaced the Dueling Dragons, which was a dueling roller coaster that had some troubled history with guests getting hurt while they were riding. Um, I'm sure if you're an enthusiast, you know the story behind that ride and how upset you were when they Universal announced that they were taking this gigantic dueling coaster out. But I think they replaced it with a really well done ride, and it's a worthy of the replacement, and probably going to win some sort of award in the amusement industry for best new ride for this 2020.
Yeah, originally when the wizard when the Harry Potter section opened up, I think didn't they change the name to
Yeah,
Dragon Challenge?
yeah, it was changed
Yeah.
to Dragon Challenge to fit the theming of the
Yeah, because
land
I think
more.
it was themed after the Hungarian horntail, I think was
Yep.
the which essentially used to be, ice,
Yeah.
and then what was formerly known as fire was, they changed the name to the Chinese firebolt, so it was themed around, like, the dragons,
Yeah.
but, of course, that was replaced with, a coaster themed on Hagrid, so I definitely look forward to seeing that one, so, um a lot of things in store, and of course, the different amusement parks throughout the country. More specifically, the ones on I would say more Midwest and also on the East Coast. They're allowed to do more because their lockdown rules, their quarantine rules are a little bit more lenient than say on the West Coast. So unfortunately, Universal Hollywood and of course Disneyland are not to this day are still not open. I mean, I know that Disneyland, at least at California Adventure, were able to open up. I think they're the front part of the park and essentially just the restaurants and then the shopping area, but they're on lockdown now. They actually had to close it. So
Yeah, they speaking of the California parks, um Six Flags Discovery Kingdom in Vallejo, California, Northern California, they have a zoo part portion of the park like Busch Gardens Tampa. And so what they were able to do and the state allowed them to do is turn their park into a drive-through, essentially a drive-through experience where they have a designated route where you stay in your car and you can drive through for however much money they said you pay, and then you get to drive through the park. And so that way it's still a way for the park to make some money because it honestly doesn't cost much. You put up the route, you tell them to drive through it, and you collect the money, and it's a way for six the chain to make money and for them to not lose as much. um
yeah, because unfortunately, like this pandemic, like especially here in Virginia, like for a good long while, it actually wasn't even until later in the year, like in the fall, when the parks were able to open. Because I mean, so many people lost their job. I mean, in just about every industry, but especially in tourism and entertainment, because that was actually one of the industries that was hit the hardest from the pandemic. Because they depend on tourism. And if you're not able to have tourism, then essentially your entire industry implodes. So, of course, a lot of hotels, entertainment venues, those who actually work in events, and then of course those in the amusement park industry. So pretty much every park worldwide had to close up for a very long time. And like Disney World and Universal in Florida, not in California, but in Florida, they didn't reopen until July. I think Hong Kong Disneyland was actually able to open in June, if I recall, or May. But it was terrible. How many people were out of work, and there's still a lot of employees of those parks that are still to this day not able to return to work because they're limited to a certain amount of people in the park. Based on it, kind of depends
and
on
that counts staff too. That doesn't
yeah.
just count guests, that counts staff.
That
And
counts
it's
staff too, yeah.
so
So it really depends on their country, their city, and also like if they're in the United States, it depends on their state. Like what each individual state, because each state in the United States is able to pretty much set their own regulations on what's allowed as far as with social distancing and with the quarantine and everything. So each state has like a certain different set of rules, but it actually went a little bit lax. in Virginia, they actually started to allow a lot more people because like earlier in the year in 2020 in the fall, the theme parks could only they were allowed to only have 1,000 people in the park at a time, and that was total. That's including like park guests and employees. So as you would imagine, well, that's not really feasible for them. So unfortunately, King's Dominion did not reopen until the Christmas season, but Busch Gardens opened in the fall. They actually started out with really more of kind of like a food and wine type festival in September. But of course, they had to scale everything back. You had to make a reservation to even go. Like even if you had a season pass, you couldn't just because like during the fall. I mean, during a normal season, you could go every Saturday or like every single weekend if you wanted to, and you can go at any given time. But because of course, because of the pandemic, and of course they have to limit the amount of people coming into the park at a given point. What they ended up doing is they required a reservation, regardless of whether you're a park member or you're just a guest coming in and having to pay uh, as a single day ticket. And then you were not allowed to come in for the entire day. It had to be like a short time frame. It started out just like as 4 hour increments. Now, and then they had like multiple time slots. I think they had like a morning to like middle of the day, and then they had one for the evening. And you can actually place a reservation for multiple time slots. It's just you can only be in the park just during that time frame. So for like tonight, my wife and a good friend of mine and I, we're all going to go to Christmas celebration at Busch Gardens, and we're going to the 5 to 10 p.m. So we can only be in the park from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. Because they can only have but so many people in the park, so that way they can get the certain amount of people coming into the park. Everyone gets the chance to ride the rides and do the things that they want to in the park. And of course, the entire park is not open. It's really more of like 75% of the park, so not the entire park. Like they end up like closing off a few sections, because feasibly they can't open up the entire park. It just doesn't make sense for them money wise. So,
Speaking
but
of the lax rules, so you mentioned how Busch Gardens opened up late and were able to. Well, in Ohio, they have two Cedar Fair parks, which are the sister parks for Kings Dominion, which you mentioned earlier. Is that Kings Island and Cedar Point actually filed a lawsuit against the state of Ohio back in early July when they were told after they wrote this plan and how they were going to keep everybody safe and how they were going to follow these safety procedures and all this. Like they had a game plan that was very well structured, and the state said no, you still can't open. Well, they filed a lawsuit suing the state, and within 48 hours they were allowed to have an opening date saying, okay, you guys can open at this time and operate your business as is. And people were talking like, why isn't Virginia doing this, or why aren't other states doing this? Why aren't they their parks, if they're like Six Flags or a big name corporation like SeaWorld Parks Entertainment, Cedar Fair, why aren't they going in and suing per state saying, hey, we need to open? So it was just interesting that Ohio, like the two parks in Ohio, decided to go in together on a lawsuit and kind of flex muscle, saying, "Hey, if you're not going to let us open, well then we might be able to win a lawsuit in court, and you're gonna have to pay us anyway." So it's
yeah, I wish that the parks in Virginia did the same thing. Band together and sue the state. Say, hey, you're really hindering our business.
yeah.
We can't really
Now you can have it.
make much of a living,
Yep.
by having our park completely closed. And it just so what they ended up doing, like what King's Dominion and Busch Gardens both ended up doing is, I think they actually just approached like just the state of Virginia. They didn't necessarily sue the state, but they ended up just kind of like complaining to this, like, hey, this is not feasible for our business. And it was actually both parks, the leadership together actually coming to the state and say, you know we're not going to open, if you don't allow more people into our parks, because like they're because the state said, well, you can allow this amount of people, and the park's saying that's not going to work for us. You know, you can't lump us in, because what the state of Virginia ended up doing is they lumped in amusement parks in the same category as other entertainment venues like movie theaters, you know, like bowling alleys. I'm like, you can't do that for an open air, several acres amusement park. You know, it just, it's a completely different business model. And that's exactly was the argument on Busch Gardens and King's Dominion's standpoint, is that, you know, this is not feasible. You know, they cannot open up their entire park with so few people, you know, because it's very expensive per day just to run a single park. I mean, you got to think about, you know, all the electricity and then the plumbing, all the utilities, you know, to run the rides, you know,
plus
to get
staff.
plus staff, you know, it just, and then of course, they have to have insurance, you know, make sure everyone is safe in the park. But and then because of COVID, now they're having to spend more money on, you know, sanitizing the ride, sanitizing the entire park. They have to have hand sanitizer available for all the park guests, and it just, so it adds a lot more. But unfortunately, King's Dominion didn't open until the Christmas season. They ended up calling it Taste of the Season, but it was really more of kind of like a scaled back version of Winterfest. And then, but Busch Gardens opened in September, and then again in October. They did a scaled back version of Howl-O-Scream, which they ended up just calling it Halloween Harvest. None of the haunted mazes were open. It was just the scare zones. And then some of the roller coasters were open. I think really only it was like 75% of the park that was actually open. And then they did the same sort of thing for the Christmas season. They did a scaled back version of Christmas Town and ended up just calling it Christmas Celebration. Now it's still actually going on through this weekend. It's last day is tomorrow.
Do you have a
But
reservation for tomorrow as well?
not for tomorrow, but we do have a reservation, 5 p.m. reservation for this evening. So we're looking forward to that. I mean, honestly, given the constraints, you know, of they have the restrictions of COVID, they've done a great job. Honestly,
Yeah,
they
no, it's
at accommodating it and being able to bring people in to still be able to ride some coasters and just, you know, it's a lot. I can honestly tell you. I mean, I know everyone can pretty much relate on. You know, people are just tired of being stuck inside all the time. You know, they want to just get out and do things.
so I went
And
to I went to Vegas in July, and everybody, a lot of people know that they have kind of a notorious coaster for being known for being really rough, the New York coaster. And talking about your just a few seconds ago, you were talking about sanitizing everything. So they had socially distanced markers in the line when you waited in line for this ride. And then between every single cycle of the ride, they would, because you have an entrance and an exit point where the train, you know, stops 10 feet behind for the to get off, for people to get off, so that way you don't have the same entrance and exit points like with people. But the staff will clean the train, wipe down the train, and then they'll send it forward so that people can load. And so that was kind of cool to see. It added time, but it made you feel safer as a guest because they used every row, but they sanitized between every cycle. So it was like seeing that as a guest before I was about to ride made it feel a lot easier. Just the psychological, because again, this was in the middle of the pandemic. So it was interesting to see how, you know, this was a small hotel that had a roller coaster in it, and they were following it just as good, if not better, than I would have ever expected.
yeah, I mean, honestly, all the parks worldwide have appeared to honestly do a fantastic job at just accommodating, you know,
Oh,
the
yeah,
things.
Vegas was
A lot,
on top of it.
yeah, a lot of the parks, I mean, it's a very similar thing of what each one is doing, you know, like they're alternating the rows.
Yep.
And then if they end up having like a wide row, they end up putting like 2 or 3 seats in between
Yeah.
each
Does
each group. So it's like your own, if it's your own like immediate group, like if it's you and your
yeah.
family or like you and your close friends, but then they end up putting at least like 2 or 3 seats in between you and like the group next to you.
So
So
at six, I saw it on a video from Coach Studios when he was at Six Flags Over Georgia, and I'm sure this is across the chain that they have like plexiglass um between each road, just so that way if they do use, like, if you're waiting in line and for whatever reason they're using all roads, there's at least a plexiglass divider, so that way you just can't.
Yeah, Disney. I know that Disney World is actually doing the. Universal is as well. Like Disney World, I know it for sure on Rise of the Resistance, because
Yeah,
there's only, I think it's only like 2 or 3 rows in like one car.
yeah.
So they want to take full advantage of every seat that they can get. So they've actually been implementing more of the plexiglass dividers. I know they've done the same thing on Smuggler's Run, um, which is Millennium Falcon, or yes, Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. They've actually put a plexiglass barrier like in between each seat. I mean, of course, it kind of takes away from the experience, but the idea is to try to have as many people as possible be able to get onto the ride, because like if you're going to Disney World, you're going to Universal, Busch Gardens, any of the Cedar Fair parks, you're going to Cedar Point, in any park worldwide during the pandemic. Just make the best of it. You just try to do as much as you can with what they have available.
Yeah,
That's all. So
don't go in with normal expectations, and you
yeah,
will not be disappointed, because if you go in expecting it to be pre-COVID, where
yeah,
everything's open, you'll be able to ride everything, and the lines will. Oh, there might be 1,000, less people on average in the line, but you might wait just as long because we got to follow these rules and regulations set
yeah,
by the park and the state and the country, and it's like you just got to accept that. Okay, I'm going to Busch Gardens today, and you know I'm not gonna ride everything. Like, just go in with the lowest expectation, and then walk away knowing that you probably did more than you thought you would, and you can't be upset.
yeah. Because I and for those who are actually going to the different parks for the very first time, I mean, just kind of like don't get your hopes too up too much, because there's a lot of things that each park, they're going to have some limitations on what they can do. That they're trying to do as much as they can with what their state, with what their city or their country is allowing. So and I know everyone has pretty much heard this a lot. It's just we're all in this together, and it's great that all these amusement parks, all these companies, and all even the hospitals, like everybody's just like they're doing the best that they can with what that they can provide. So it's just to even have the ability to go to amusement park during the pandemic is amazing. So but and of course all of these I honestly haven't seen a single, big amusement park that has not handled the pandemic well. They've all honestly done fantastic jobs at like making the accommodation. They're encouraging, no matter what park it is. Like I've searched in the news, like they're all doing the best that they can to encourage people to social distance. Of course, they're having the social distance markings on the ground and like different stores, and also outside, on the pathways. And then of course they're social distancing the rides. They're including hand sanitizer throughout the parks. They're sanitizing the rides. And then of course they're doing was like the touchless kind of thermometer, like the forehead thermometers, or
Yep.
some parks are using infrared
Six
thermometers.
Flags Six Flags has something that you walk through, and it takes your temperature and
Yeah, so
vital to everything,
thermal
like,
thermal
something.
imaging, yeah, thermal imaging thermometer or
and
something like
and
that.
from the people that I know in the industry, that, and friends that I know travel, that are continually traveling to parks, through driving to them, that they said that Six Flags is, COVID safety regulations, like
Mhm.
temperature check, like they call it the temperature checkpoint,
Yeah.
that it's the best in the industry because it's so much quicker and efficient.
Yeah, and a lot of the like, of course, they're checking not just Six Flags, but like all the parks, like nationwide and worldwide, like they're checking each individual guest that's coming in, and of course they encourage everyone, like if you have any symptoms, don't come. And that's the same with anywhere, like any of the
Yeah.
businesses. Like you go to a restaurant, you go to you go to a pharmacy, and they're going to have the same rules. So but it's just to even be able to go to an amusement park. I mean, so because otherwise this would be a very depressing year if we did not have amusement parks still available to us, especially as avid theme park goers. We need that outlet, that adrenaline rush, that experience, that the feel of flying. We need to experience that every so often. And a lot of the parks are actually do a great job, like even with their landscaping, where you there are some they could definitely do better than others, but where so a lot of the amusement parks don't have a lot of theming, but at least their landscaping is done well. But of course, there's certain theme parks. You have Busch Gardens, you have Universal, you have Disney World. I think was it Hershey Park.
Hershey's
Um,
open.
yeah, where they're like all the different theme parks worldwide is they essentially what their goal is to immerse you into the world of the different lands that you travel throughout, in the park. So and of course there's different parks, some that do better than others, like Disney World and Universal. They completely immerse you into that world. Like you go to Universal and you feel, the idea is that you feel like you're actually in the Harry Potter movies. You go to Disney World, you go to Disney's Animal Kingdom, you actually feel like you're on the planet Pandora, from Avatar. You feel like you're on, a planet in the Star Wars galaxy at Galaxy's Edge. So that is a completely different experience going to a theme park
To
versus
Yeah,
amusement park.
Hershey. Just to speak quickly on Hershey. Hershey is obviously where Hershey's chocolate was founded, and Milton Hershey, the creator of it. It's not really immersing you. It's just they have a chocolate world where you can sit on a ride, and it takes you through the process of how they make Hershey chocolate. So it's cool, and they redid their front entrance, and it, like, the town is makes you feel like you're in, obviously, Hershey, PA, but it makes you feel like you're at a touristy place, but it's not really a touristy place. It's a normal town, just happens to be where Hershey's chocolate's made. But it's a cool town, and definitely I would recommend going to it as a park and visit. And they have a great coaster collection, and I can't wait to go back because I didn't get to go this past year because of the pandemic.
Yeah, there's so many parks that I still need to go. Like sadly, I haven't been to the outside of Virginia and Florida. I haven't really been to any other amusement parks, so I need to catch up. Matthew is he's got quite a few of over me, like all the different amusement parks that you've been to. Because I think like whenever you go out of town, don't you normally try to see like if there's like an amusement park close by and you
Um,
check it out?
yeah, I used to as a kid. Yeah, when I got hooked on it, I remember when summer of 2000, Millennium Force, the first Giga coaster, which is the term for any coaster from 3 to 400 feet, which was coined by Cedar Fair, was built. Uh, Nagashima Spa Land in Japan built a coaster that was 8 feet taller, and I remember I wanted to go ride it just so I could say I've been on the currently the world's tallest coaster, and so
I think we have
he is in
lost.
the early
Oh, there we
2000.
go. Matt, you still there? Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm here.
Your video froze up for
Yeah,
a moment there. Sorry about that.
no, so for yeah, I basically, when I was a kid, I wanted to go to anywhere that had a park, or if we were driving to, let's say, drop my sister off at college, if there was a way to get to a park on the way, stop there for a day or two, or on the way back, like, I would try and talk my way into it. Um, I been keeping up with the industry since I was little. I remember when Cedar Point announced Top Thrill Dragster. I heard it for the first time on the radio through WTOP, which is a local news station in the area that I live. They mentioned, this was going to be record breaking. It turns out it's going to be, launch you 0 to 120 in 3.5 seconds. It goes 420 feet up. Like, I remember sitting before school and hearing this and thinking, okay, we're going to Cedar Point this summer, which was a tradition for me and my family, is every summer that we would try and go to Cedar Point for a day or two. And then when I always talked about as a kid, oh, it'd be so cool to work here, like, so cool. And then when I turned 18, I was like, why don't you go work there for the summer? So I ended up doing that for 3 summers. But that's another story for another day. I could talk all day about working there.
Yeah. Unfortunately I've never had the pleasure to be able to work in an amusement park. I always wanted to.
I will say working at an amusement park, depending what department you work on, you will get different experience. And if you're like, let's say you work corporate versus, some high school, college kid that is pushing a ride button to make it go is completely different. So, and it also depends on the park. Like, honestly, Cedar Point was the only park I ever wanted to work at. I did my 3 summers and I'm happy with it. And I have no desire to work in a park unless it was at the corporate level where, you know, I wasn't spending time, from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. at night working and dealing with thousands of guests and being asked, does this ride go upside down when you can clearly see that it doesn't? And I understand that's part of like, you know, you want to have fun and act, ask the stupid questions just for laughter as a guest. I get that because we've all done it. But like when you hear the same question over and over again, it gets repetitive. So like my mindset has changed as being a guest since I've worked in an amusement park. Like just try and go up and be nice to people. Like say, hey, how are you doing? How's your day? Because you don't know if they just dealt with a family that was upset about something from previously in the day or whatever. So like my whole approach of being a guest after working at Cedar Point is just completely changed. And I would recommend anybody if you're in the industry or if you love roller coasters and you get a chance, work at whether it's Six Flags or Cedar Point, fill that void, fill that dream of working in the industry because you only get one life and you might as well check as many things off your bucket list that you want to do.
Yeah, so definitely, just try to do what you can to show as much respect for the park employees as you can. Regardless of where they work. Because you got to think about, they're people just like you are and we are, and just keep in mind that it is a very it's very different for them, like for you, of course, a lot of people that are going to amusement parks, they're actually on vacation. But think about when you're in the amusement park, the park employees, they're not on vacation, they're working. So you may be having a absolutely fabulous time, and but of course their goal is to try to make your experience as good a one as it as possible. and
And
and of
that's what you're
course
told.
yeah, and they do a great job to do that. So, but it just the experience, of coming across like how much work that they do, how much effort that they do to make the experience a magical one. Like for example, for Disney World, I can personally attest that their employees, Disney calls them cast members. They're fantastic. I mean, like some of the best customer service I've ever experienced. They really go above and beyond to make your trip as great as possible. Like there's just the little things that they do. But I mean, of course, Disney World's not the only park where their employees try to go above and to go the next level. But Disney is definitely one that they really do go next level with their employees. Like for example, um, my wife and I, we went to Disney World for our honeymoon, like after we got married back in 2014, and we went to Star Wars weekends. And this was actually a big Star Wars event that they had at Hollywood Studios, and unfortunately, that was the last year that they had it. That was before they started added a lot more things, permanent Star Wars things in the park. So at that time, it was just like a yearly thing. They would have a yearly event over the summer, and then they would have different things going on, different activities throughout the day. They would have a lot of they would actually bring in special cast members, that were in the costume. They would actually bring ones that were dressed up as, different characters in Star Wars. Then they would also have some celebrities there as well. They would actually have actors from the Star Wars movies, from the different animated shows, and then they would actually make a celebrity appearance, or you might actually be able to get to meet them, get their autograph, things like that. So we actually had the opportunity to there was where Billy D. Williams was signing autographs at one of the buildings that they had at Hollywood Studios. And we went up to because we unfortunately, you had to have like a, I think like a wristband to even get in, and a lot of these people had gotten wristbands like prior the night before, and you know, it was like a really long line. And these were people that had already paid to get in, but they actually did have we weren't quite sure if there was a standby line, and we were just like, okay, if we don't get to meet them, it's not a big deal. We went up to the cast members that were there near the entrance, and we asked them, say, hey, we were just wondering if there's a standby line. We unfortunately don't have any tickets to see him. We were just wondering, is there a standby? Um, and we didn't even say anything about it, but we were wearing, like, they have celebration buttons that you like if you're celebrating something, birthday, anniversary, or something like that. We were wearing the buttons, for the honeymoon, and they must have noticed that because they actually say, "Hold on, let me talk to my manager," and they end up talking to their manager, and we were able to we actually lucked out that after all the people were done that actually had the wristband, we were first in line of the standby line, and we got to meet Billy D. Williams, got his autograph and everything. So that's just a small example of of them going above and beyond to make it a magical experience. So and it doesn't necessarily have to be like you're celebrating something specific. It just could just be something they notice that, you're a big time Star Wars fan, or like, of like one of the other movies. It's just, that they really take that next step to make the experience. But, of course there's amusement parks worldwide where their employees there do the same thing, as much as they can for the guests.
I
So,
had actually quite the different experience. I had a parent do something nice for me when I was working at Cedar Point. I was working the kids area, and the ride had finished riding, and I let everybody out of their seats, and they go run off to their parents and run back in line or whatever, continue on their day. Well, I saw this little girl was panicking and she couldn't find her mom, and I was like, "All right, just stay here with me. We'll wait. She'll come back." Turns out the mom was getting, because it was like 95 degrees outside and there was no shade where I was working, so I was getting beat with the sun and it was hot. Turns out she got me a gigantic glass of water for me for no
oh wow,
reason.
that's
So, like, can you, like, just, and it's something to this day, and it's been 10 years. Like, that
wow.
has stuck with me, like, that's something that you don't forget, like, those nice little gestures, like, that's what I was saying, like,
Mhm.
earlier, is, like, if you can be nice to somebody, you don't know what that can do to them or if they'll remember it, 10, 15 years from now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we went to Busch Gardens for Halloween Harvest, which was like the scaled back version of um, Howl-O-Scream, and we actually had like a lot of candy left over from Halloween because unfortunately we didn't get any trick or treaters. We had like a whole bunch of candy left over, and my wife had actually made like little goodie bags, to give out to the trick or treaters. So we have all these goodie bags, and I'm like, what are we gonna do with them? So what we ended up doing is, like, when we went to Busch Gardens, we actually gave one of those goodie bags to one of the ladies that was actually working in the when you're parking, the toll booth where you pay for going in, and we handed her one of the goodie bags, and like her face lit up, and so she's like, "Oh, thank you so much, you made my day." Just if you
Those
can do
small
that for the
gestures,
park.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, just like if you could do that for the park cars, I'm like, even like normal people in your life, like if you can do that for your hairstylist, or like your mailman or mailwoman, like where they're actually a part of your daily life, but you don't really notice, all the effort that they go into it. So if there's a little small gestures that you do for people, especially in the amusement parks, because they go through a lot of heartache and frustration, more than people realize. So because they actually, no matter what the behavior of the park goers are, like, they actually have to deal with some pretty unruly customers. So
I have plenty of stories for that, but that's another episode.
yes. So the different parks throughout the world, throughout the country, each of them are doing different events, and of course, the ones that are in better climates, like in Florida, they're able to actually do more things throughout the year because they have a lot better climate. Like Florida, you on the most part, year-round warm weather. I mean, they do still get cold weather there, but nowhere near as much as like more north in the United States. But like for example, let me actually do a little screen share here. Let me see here. Go on a split screen. I'll do my screen share of my screen over here. I have for Busch Gardens website. So they're actually there was announced in the local news that they're actually going to be doing events throughout the year, even in January and February, because they most of the time they actually don't. Uh, in a normal season, they actually wouldn't be open until right now. They would be finishing up with the Christmas celebration, but during after that from January until March, the park is completely closed, so it wouldn't open until March, and then they
Middle
start
of
off with
March, right?
yeah, middle of March, and it's usually they the first day they do like a past member preview day, and then after that, the day after, that's when like the normal season starts. But it normally would not start until March. This year, they're actually starting in January. They have some brand new events too, like winter weekends. Uh, they're actually going to be keeping up a lot of their lights from Christmas celebrations. So of course, like the ones that are obviously Christmas decorations, it's my understanding that they're actually removing those, but like the lights are staying up and they're actually going to have uh some zoo animals that they don't normally have, because like in Busch Gardens they actually do have um, animal conservation, like they and Busch Gardens Williamsburg they have they have gray wolves, they have bald eagles, and then some other small animals as well. The Tampa Bay Busch Gardens is actually more of a zoo, and they have several different African animals. But for winter weekends, for Busch Gardens Williamsburg, they're actually going to have few more animals than they normally do. And that's actually running from January 15th through the 24th. Starting in February, this is actually brand new, Mardi Gras. Really looking forward to that. My wife and I really want to go to that because we actually love New Orleans. We've been to New Orleans, fantastic city, and so we really look forward to sampling that Cajun and Creole cuisine at Mardi Gras celebration from January 29th through the 28th. Brand new this year, St. Patrick's Day celebration from March 5th through the 28th. Their food and wine festival is actually returning a little early. It's
Yeah,
going to
that's what
returning in
isn't it like June and
it's normally
July?
in like later. Yeah, it's usually later in the summer, but it's actually returning early this year in the spring. Doing a kids weekend for those with the little ones. They're doing a kids weekend, Sesame Street, in the spring. Summer nights, they're actually going to have some fireworks displays over the summer. Beer fest in the summer and the early fall. Hallow Scream, really looking forward to that, is returning in the fall this year. They're also returning Count Spectacular, which is Sesame Street themed, and Christmas Town is also going to be returning this year. So, really looking forward to that because unfortunately 2020 had scaled back versions of it. It wasn't like the whole event. So, really looking forward to seeing Howl Scream and Christmas Town returning this year.
So
Also, sorry, go ahead, Matt.
no, I was just saying that the goal of this is so a lot of parks in these climates that, they ran the testing of, the winter events like Six Flags open, some of their parks like the one in Maryland, Six Flags America, New Jersey, Six Flags Great Adventure, and Carowinds, which is a Cedar Fair park and on the border of North and South Carolina, they open for Winterfest. Is they're seeing if this is can be successful, and then if it is, or if it's making enough profit that they can start to shorten their off season and then continually make money and open their parks year round, whether it's just weekends or if it's 365. So the amusement industry is changing before our eyes, where a lot of parks would end their season October and Halloween weekend, and then they would open early April, majority of them. So you would have a 5 month gap. But if you can open, for select weekends or weekends the rest of the year, and provide people jobs and in a source of
Yeah,
income, then those employees are going to be more loyal, and then you're giving people more and more options to do. It's not just
yeah,
a summer thing;
absolutely.
it's expanding. So look for because outside of the Florida parks, Texas just all the Texas parks just announced that they're going year round. So, where parks can do it, they're going to do it. I'm not saying like
Yeah,
Vermont or Maine or wherever, but I'm saying like the states that can do it are going to look for those parks, whether they're chain or not, to open year round. I feel like
yeah,
that's the
absolutely.
direction we're going.
Yeah, and for anyone that's actually close to a park, if you like if you're close to an amusement park and you're not very far from one, definitely if you have the opportunity to go to one, go to it. Like if they have different events going on, go to it if you have the chance to do so. Because that way, allows these amusement parks to be open, to be able to bring more of their employees, to be able to return to work. So of course, that gives great amusements for the park goers, but also that allows people to return back to work. So we're really, it's a really exciting year coming up. And again, and of course, like all these other parks are doing very similar events, trying to do year round. But we are just about out of time. So we really appreciate anyone who was able to watch the live stream for Coaster Junkies, with a lot more events coming up for the other parks. So for future episodes, we'll definitely be able to talk about that. And Matt, thank you so much for
Yep.
joining me today. And this is definitely going to be a lot of fun for this podcast. So we thank you so much for anyone who was able to join us watching the live stream and also on the archive. And if you would like to follow us on social media, we are available on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. There's a different handle for Twitter, but our main handle for Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram is Coaster Junkies. It's at Coaster Junkies USA, spelled out. That is our handle if you would like to follow us on social media. And we certainly look forward to any future episodes. If any other of our fellow avid theme park fans would like to join us on the podcast, please feel free to contact us through those social media pages and just reach out to us. I would absolutely look forward to having you as a guest on our show. So we hope you all have a wonderful weekend, a wonderful year. Happy New Year, and we just hope that this would be a much better year than 2020. And we hope you all have a great day. Thanks for joining us.